Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. I'm a former journalist who's now using this show to uncover amazing and insightful stories simply through asking questions, while also giving you an example of what it means to listen more than you speak so that you can become a more thoughtful and informed person. On the Follow-Up Question podcast, I'll talk to some of the best interviewers I know to get their perspective on what it means to ask amazing questions. I'll also interview people from all different backgrounds and perspectives who have amazing stories to tell, and I'll bring those stories to you by asking thoughtful, logical questions. So whether you're a journalist, a podcaster yourself, a blogger, someone who wants to learn how to be quick to listen and slow to speak, or someone who just likes to hear great stories, this is the show for you. Today on the show, I welcome Lindsay Tjepkema. She's the CEO of a company called Casted, which is a podcasting software for the B2B space. With the explosion of podcasts, yours truly being among those, there has been an overwhelming push by brands, by companies, to start a branded podcast, to start a podcast on behalf of the company, to use it as a top of the funnel mechanism for driving awareness and brand awareness and audience to that particular company. And what Lindsay and her co-founders have done at Casted is create a software that serves the needs of companies very differently than what your average Joe or Jane podcaster would require in terms of stats and data and analytics. And just so you know, Casted is not a sponsor of this episode. I reached out to Lindsay mainly because I'm a marketer myself in my full-time job. In my full-time world, I'm a marketer, and it was really interesting to me to see the rise and growth of a company like Casted and the work that Lindsay and her co-founders and the team at Casted are doing in the B2B podcasting space, because I'm one of those companies. I work for one of those companies that started a branded podcast to gain top of the funnel awareness, to drive brand affinity, to get our message out there, to connect with customers and potential customers, and really tell our brand story and our culture. And this is the work that Lindsay and her team at Casted are doing. I also really wanted to get her insight as a marketer myself. She comes from the marketing world as well. And it's very, very rare to see a marketer move into the CEO chair. You often have people in the software side of the house move up the ranks and either start their own company and are the CEO, or move into the CEO suite or CEO chair. You often have people on the sales side. It's very common for someone on the sales side to move into the CEO chair, or often you see a chief operating officer or someone on the finance side. All that is to say, it's rare to see someone on the marketing side move into a CEO seat. And I wanted to get her perspective, not only as a marketer, but as a woman moving into and guiding and leading a company from the CEO chair. We talk about so many different things about that experience and about starting Casted and her experience in what that looks like and how her marketing background prepared her in other ways where she's still learning. It's a fantastic conversation. I am grateful to Lindsay for coming on this show and walking me through her experience for selfish reasons, no doubt, just to get her insight. I certainly have aspirations down the road to lead a company as well. So it's great to hear that, but also get her insight into the world of podcasting and how businesses and brands can tackle that space and how they are based on what she's seeing with the work that her and her team are doing at Casted. So enjoy this conversation. Here is my chat with Lindsay Tjepkema, CEO of Casted. I love following you on LinkedIn, and you post so much great content. And something that I've noticed that you've been talking about a lot lately is whenever you're creating a show, you got to ask yourself, who is it for and why are you doing it? Where did that come from? And kind of explain your reasoning and your thought process in those two sayings.
Yeah, gosh, came from 15 years of just being in marketing, right? Because it's not just about podcasting. Who is it for, and why are you doing it? Is for any content. It's for any campaign, right? I think it's really easy, especially in podcasting, to get really excited about the medium and neglect the audience and say, yeah, we're going to do a podcast and we're going to talk about all these things. And it's going to be, about our culture and it's going to be about our products. And we're going to talk about our customers. And then you dilute it down so much that you just, before you know it, it's not really for anyone and it doesn't really serve any particular purpose. And therefore it's not a success and it gets shut down. So by pausing, even if it's for a moment, and jotting down some notes, or if you have the luxury of a little bit of time to write down and to note, who specifically is this for, and why, specifically as a brand, why are we doing it? What in the world are we here for?
Your background is like you said, in marketing, and I was just kind of researching you a little bit, and you actually came to a place where you're producing a podcast. It looks like full time in your previous role. How did that role come about, and when did you start to make the connections that brands need to be podcasting?
Yeah. I wish it had been full time. So I was I was VP of brand and content at a global enterprise SaaS business. So I was overseeing all of the content, the blog, the webinars, the website, the podcast, the everything globally for this company. And I had a small but mighty and very, very talented team that we were all working on together. And about a year into that role, I said, it's time for us to do a podcast. We were a 20-year-old company, global company that was missing a voice. I said, we literally need a voice. And so we launched a show and quickly found a couple of things. One is that it did exactly what I hoped it would do. It helped us to reach our audiences, both external and then also internal, our sales team and our team around the world. But also that there wasn't a whole lot of technology to serve marketing teams like me. And so fast forward, I'm sure we'll get into this later, but that's how Casted was born. And the question you asked about why do brands need to be doing this is because it's just that it's about connection. And regardless of what you're peddling, what kind of services you're selling or what kind of products you're selling, people are buying from people. People don't buy from brands, they buy from people. And I think that's perhaps even more true in B2B. When you're buying on behalf of your company, you're really buying from the other person on the other end of that equation. And podcasts offer something that's truly unique, which is a way to connect with your audience in a way that no other content can. Right now, anyone who's listening to the show is hearing our voices. They're listening into a conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
We're inviting them to listen in on this conversation. Blogs. I love blogs. I've been involved in lots of blogs throughout my career. We have one at Casted, and it's an important part of our marketing strategy, but they don't do that. It's not the same. When somebody's reading your words, it's not the same as hearing your voice. And especially for a brand, that's a really unique opportunity to connect with your audience on a completely different level.
Something you mentioned there, just kind of in passing, is really intriguing. You said it was great for internal purposes as well. Dive into that a little bit. What did you mean by that, and how so?
Yeah. So specifically in my past experience, and we can dig deeper about internal opportunities, but it was very much an external podcast. It was it was part of our content strategy, right? But it gave me and my team in Indianapolis, Indiana, the opportunity to connect with our other team members in London, in Vienna, in Hong Kong, around the world, to say, hey, here's a conversation with one of our customers, talking about, indirectly about how we've served them. So here's something that you can rally around. Here's something you can learn from. Here's something that you can use to serve your own customers, the people that you're working with. And again, it also gave us a voice, right? So it helped us to rally around something and give us all something to hold on to, regardless of where we are around the world. Again, blog posts, it's just different. It's just when they're getting into an episode and they're hearing, who was me, talk to our customers or talk to our partners, it just resonates on a different level than being like, hey, read this blog post. It's really important that you know what was in this post. It was different, and it brought us together in a different way.
Sure. When did you start to realize that there were things that were missing for a brand that, just an average Joe podcaster like myself would not necessarily need? When did you start to make those connections, obviously laying the groundwork for Casted, but where did that begin and what were you thinking about at that time?
I was shock. I think it originated with shock that with content marketing being around for 15, 20 years, and all of we've all seen the lists of, thousands and thousands of MarTech software
Oh yeah, everyone's seen that graphic, right?
Right? And it just grows exponentially every year. And so with that in mind, I was like, well, of course there's going to be myriad technologies to serve me and my team as we launch a podcast. And I was right, but I was also wrong. I was right in that there's so much podcasting technology. There's so much. There's hosting, and there's clipping and sharing, and there's audiograms, and there's transcription. There's all kinds of things. But one, very few of them are in a platform where they're all made to work together. They're usually just one-off tools and point solutions. And two, very, very few of them are made for marketing teams. Some of them aren't even made for podcasting, right? It's just that that's what we're all using them for. And so I was really shocked, and I was just sitting there. I was like, how is this how we're doing this? Podcasting is huge. Listenership is huge. It's a huge opportunity for brands, and the technology just isn't there to serve me and my marketing team to collaborate the way that we need to, and the way that we do, to create and to launch other content, to manage that content and kind of move it around and use it across different channels, and to measure its effectiveness. So we went out and built it at Casted.
What was that process like? What was that process like to go from, hey, there's nothing there, to thinking, I want to start a company with this?
Well, honestly, it's kind of a lot of what you're doing. It's asking a lot of questions, right? So we started my first few weeks on the job, if you will, was me talking to marketers. Do you have a podcast at your company? Why? Why not? Have you ever? Will you ever? What are the challenges? What would that look like? What would you expect? And those 75 or 100 interviews within a couple of weeks turned into the foundation of our product. And we heard, and I didn't want to base it just on my experience, because what if I was wrong? What if I was in a vacuum and I was the only one who was experiencing these things? But I found the opposite, was that I was very normal. Everyone else was shocked too, and expected more, and really expected there to be a place where a marketing team could work on podcasting, could put it at the center of their strategy, could leverage it across other channels, and to really measure its impact on the brand. And so that's what it looked like. That's where it started, was just asking around, making sure that we had a good foundation to build from. And then we just started building.
I love that, obviously, with the name of this show, I love that you went to questions first. What were some of the questions that you were asking that gave you the most meaningful, I guess, information or data back from those interviews?
So the interviews that were most helpful were, do you have a podcast now? And they would either say yes or no, but we did. Okay, great. Because the ones that no, we haven't, and we might, those are really great too about messaging. But for specifically building the product, it was, okay, you have felt that pain. Tell me about that pain. And quite often it was, what, kind of how were you doing it? What did your tech stack look like? How were you, or how are you actually producing your show? Tell me about that. And just listening, like, tell me about what that experience is like. What kind of challenges is that posing for you and for your team? Do you have a team? Is it one person? Like, understanding who's behind it really helped too, because if somebody's feeling the pain by themselves, or it's an entire team or an entire department, that really helps you kind of uncover some details. Also asking, what would you expect to see? If you could put anything, if you could wave a magic wand. I love that. If you could wave a magic wand questions, because that really gets people thinking about, like, okay, well, all the barriers down, what should there be? And we heard that a lot, as far as, I expect more. I wish there was more. This is too clunky. It shouldn't be like this. It's the one thing out of all of my content that really is siloed and is separate, and that I can't pull into all the rest of it. So yeah, just continuing to pick.
Were you doing this at the same time as being like, I'm interested in the process of going down that route. Were you trying to build Casted at the same time, or was this something where you had jumped all in and said, hey, we're building this thing. I'm interested in I guess the seeds of growth there.
Yeah. No, I left my role at my previous company and jumped all in.
Yeah.
And so I got started. Casted was part of a studio, so a venture studio, High Alpha Venture Studio here in Indianapolis. And specifically, Scott Dorsey reached out to me. They were working on a sprint week, which is what they do to kind of come up and conceptualize new company ideas. And he reached out to me because we had this podcast literally kind of across the street from where the studio was, from where the venture studio was. And he was like, hey, you are doing B2B podcasting, and that's an area that we think, presents a lot of opportunity. And would you like to talk? And I said, yep. So we talked and had a really good conversation about the opportunity in this space, what exists and what is missing. My just kind of raw feedback as a marketer and what I had expected and what I could not believe was the status quo and what I would love to see. And the more we talked, the more it was like, yeah, there's something here. There's a company here. And I said, okay, if there's a company here, it's me. I'm going to lead it. So that was the beginning of Casted. And from there, yeah, just jumped in head first, started doing all those interviews, brought on 2 co-founders to kind of head up go-to-market and product to build the thing and sell the thing. And yeah, that was a little over a year ago.
Is this the path that you saw for yourself as a longtime marketer? Was this in the plans?
No, but at the same time, I can't imagine it any other way, right? I am through and through a marketing, specifically content and brand marketing nerd. I'm obsessed. I'm very passionate about it. And so going way back, as my career came together, I started as like a jack of all trades marketer. I started as a kind of one-person marketing department at a small company where I was doing everything from press releases to running events to kind of developing the website to getting them started on social media way back when.
Yep.
And then over time, as I had the opportunity to kind of hone in and get more specific, it was always more and more about content and brand. And that was as content was coming of age too. That was as blogs became commonplace and social media became something that businesses do. And so as I got more and more obsessed, all I knew is that that's what I wanted to do. So I was on the company side, I was on the agency side. I kind of did my own thing, my own consulting thing for a while, jumped back into agency, jumped back into corporate. And again, all I knew was that that's what I wanted to do, was build strong brands, create and strategize around great content, not just for the sake of content, but for the sake of connection. And so as time went on, I just became more and more enriched in that and started leading teams that were doing that and leading initiatives that were doing that. And so when this opportunity presented itself, it was like, I can't imagine anyone else doing this. And so it's me. And since then, it's, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of learning, stepping from, marketing leader to CEO. But yeah, I can't imagine it any other way.
As you're talking with Scott and the High Alpha team and you're getting Casted off the ground and you're running through these interviews and asking these questions of all these other marketers to kind of confirm the premise there, what are some of the questions you're asking yourself during this time?
Good question. Gosh, so many questions. I guess it would depend on the day, but constantly asking myself challenging myself to trust my gut, right? Because your gut is not just magic and woo-woo and instinct. It's honed over years, right? It's experience. And I, at this point have more than 15 years of experience being obsessed with content marketing and with branding and now, years of experience with podcasting and being obsessed with podcasting, not just for the sake of podcasting, but how brands should leverage it as part of their content strategy. And so I know this stuff. And over the last year and a half or so, it's been a constant nudge, reminder, question, challenge to myself to just trust that and to listen to that and to, lean into the areas that I need to grow. But when there's a fork in the road and I have to make a decision, usually I know what I need to do. I just need to trust it. Sometimes I need to fact check it, but I think that's probably the biggest one. The most overarching umbrella question of myself is like, what do you actually think you should do? Because
I love that. I love the immeasurable gut check that you can't find in data or a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
When you come up against somebody who maybe doesn't trust their gut or is not comfortable trusting their gut, how do you bring them along and get them to trust in what you know to be true to your core, right? But how do you bring them along to get to that place where they're maybe not comfortable, but willing to see what happens?
Yeah. Two answers to that. I think passion. I think just that goes a long way, and just being so convicted in what you believe to be true that it's hard for others around you not to be as well. But I would say I actually run into more often the opposite, is it someone else who trusts their gut and it doesn't necessarily align with mine. And I think in that instance, it's just conversation is important. Questions, to your point, the whole premise
Yeah.
of the show, asking a lot of questions is important. Being willing to have the tough conversations is important. And there's a difference between, stereotypical getting emotional and being passionate, right? And standing up for what you believe, whether that's something in a product or a direction of the company, or if it's something way bigger and more, culture of the company or direction of the company. Stand by what you know to be true, but also, listen more than you speak, which you speak a lot about. And be willing to have the tough conversations and to listen to each other and kind of foster that environment, generally speaking, so that others know that it's a safe place to do that as well.
It's not very common for a marketer to jump to the CEO suite, or to the CEO chair, I should say. What has that been like for you? And well, I'll start there. I'll ask one question at a time. What's that been like for you to jump from the marketing chair, leading a global organization, to jumping to the CEO seat?
Yeah. In many ways, completely natural. And in other ways, it's a learning, a big learning. So in the ways that it's natural, casting a vision, from day one, when I said, hey, this is me, I'm going to do this thing, I'm the one to lead this company, it was because I knew what it needed to be. I was the expert. I am the expert. I have a vision for what it needs to be. I have a passion that, is difficult to find a rival for. And I believe down to my toes in this business, right? So the passion is there, the vision is there. And really, my role is to be out and speak on behalf of the business and to share that vision, right? So in that way, it's very natural. On the flip side, the parts that have been a learning is more of the operations and all of the other areas of the business, right? Case in point, I don't lead marketing, right? We have a marketing director. She's fantastic. And she is there to, develop strategy, lead strategy, execute. And we work obviously very closely together. But, she's the one that's quote unquote doing marketing at Casted. And so that's a difference. But yeah, overseeing kind of everything and learning all the different angles that's new. And it's a learning experience. And I love learning. So in that way, it's a great challenge and it's exciting. But you can't learn fast enough. And I constantly want to have the experience that you need so that trusting your gut, that you can actually trust it, because when everything is new, everything is new. And so the faster you can learn and the faster you can have experiences, the more you can start to trust that instinct, because it's real. So I don't know. In some ways, it's been really natural, and in other ways, it's been a really interesting, incredible challenge.
Looking back, is there anything as a marketer, or let's say there's a marketer listening who wants to take the same journey and lead marketing and then grow into a CEO? Is there anything that you would suggest they do or learn or press into to prepare from the journey that you've obviously taken?
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because we're all different and everyone has a little bit different expertise. I mean, if you're a demand gen marketer, you've got a very different skill set than a brand marketer, right? So there is no one size fits all marketer. There's also no one size fits all CEO. But you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and with being outside of your comfort zone most of the time and trusting your gut. Because chances are, if you're a marketer turned CEO, you're someone like me who has passion for that area and for that subject matter and has a vision for the company and what the brand can be. And you've got to be so passionate about it that you trust it and that you're comfortable being outside of where you have spent the bulk of your career, to really carry the flag of that passion.
I saw recently that Casted during this pandemic time has grown by 50%. Is that correct in terms of headcount?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. Yeah.
How has that been something that you all have been able to do and sustain as a company?
Yeah. So early on, we've our first year was incredible. It was nothing short of a rocket ship. We had incredible early momentum. We were able to generate revenue very early on, and bring on some incredible customers very early on. And so that momentum carried us through into what has very quickly been the craziest year I think I've ever experienced.
I think if anybody has experienced,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so that momentum carried us through, and we were able to meet our goals. And from that, just carry through with our plan a little bit more cautiously with bringing people on board. And so it was all planned. It was all very strategic. It was not like, hey, yeah, let's just hire some people. It was a plan that we had presented, to the board, all the things that you do very early on. And as we met our goals, we said, okay, if we're going to keep going through this thing, let's proceed with caution, but let's proceed. And so that's how we did it. We just carried out our plan as we originally wrote it, and we keep pressing forward. And who knows, right? I mean, this year continues to be, the only thing we can expect is the unexpected, and so we'll continue to proceed with caution, but to take good risks, because that's how you grow, and to learn from it every step of the way.
How much of your time is spent operationally just dealing with the challenges of the business and the human side and dealing with the questions that I'm sure you get as a CEO or just as the leader of the company? How much of your time would you say is split between those two?
Oh my goodness. I don't know as far as percentages, but I actually, I prioritize quite regularly. I write down my priorities, and then I make sure that they're like, I order them, and then I ask myself, are they in the right order? What I want versus what I intention versus reality. And, people are always the most important thing, always. This team and our customers are the most important thing. And so that's always the top priority. Depending on what's going on, I don't know if it always has the most amount of time, but I do spend the bulk of my time talking to people and making sure that our people have what they need, and that our customers have what they need, and that our people are giving our customers what they need. So that's first and foremost. And then there's a lot of things that you could bulk into operational, but to me, and I'm not trying to be cheesy, I think it really is just the way I see it. It's all relational. It's all people. So there's our team, there's our customers, there's my board. It's very important to me, not because they're our board and I report to them, but that they're in on things, because that's what they're here for. That's what they want to be here for. So I spend a lot of time communicating with the board and making sure that they're up to speed on what's going on. And our investors, same thing. They're literally invested in the success of our company. So I want to make sure that they're as in the loop as they need to be, so that they can offer help where needed, and they can celebrate with us when we have celebration. And our prospects, and the market, and making sure that we have a connection from a brand and with me as the leader with those who we want to be talking to. So to me, yeah, you could separate those into buckets as far as operations and finance and legal and HR and marketing and sales and product, but really where my head always goes, which is back to the very beginning of this conversation, is who is it for and why are we doing it? So yes, it is just about podcasting, but it's also how to run a business, because with everything that you're doing, there's always a who. There's always a who on the other side. Even if it's finance, it's the people that you're paying. It's the people that need to be paying you. What's the story behind whatever's happening there? So yeah, it's one way or another. Sometimes it feels like a jumbled mess. And I wish it was more compartmentalized, but it really is there's always a hoop on the other side.
When you were talking about priorities just then, you said intention versus reality. What does that mean?
Oh man. How am I spending my time? So reality versus how do I want to be spending my time? So intention, right? And so constantly, and what is constantly? I think it probably ends up being once a quarter. It should be probably about once a month, but just evaluating kind of that question that you just asked me. How do you spend your time? How am I spending my time? Is it how I intend it to be? Or am I just getting swept up in the whirlwind of, meetings that get put on my calendar, emails that I have to respond to? Or am I being intentional about where I can be most effective for the business?
I love that early on as well, you were talking about, you were very, very upfront and saying like, I'm a good marketer. I know how to do this. I'm a good leader. I love the mindset that it takes. What do you feel in that, in all of that you're best at?
Oh man, good question. I don't know. You'd have to ask those around me, but I know I get most fired up when I go out and represent the company well. And by well, I mean with where we are strongest, right? So some new messaging that we're trying, some new, ways that we're positioning the product, and I put it out there and it resonates. And that's something that I'm doing to serve the company, to elevate the brand, to raise awareness, and to be at the forefront and to inch us further along the way. I think that I'm good at that and I'm getting better. And that's when I get most fired up. And, when the team wins, and that we can pause and rally and celebrate, it feels good too.
Lindsay, how important is it as a woman leader and CEO to have that kind of confidence in your abilities? And not only have that confidence internally, but project that. How important is that?
It is. I can't even underline it enough with how important it is. And I don't know that I do it well, but I know how important it is. And imposter syndrome is real, not just for women, but for everyone, especially when you make a huge leap from, leader, segment, category, whatever, subject leader to, in my case, marketing leader to CEO. There's, like I said, you spend the majority of your time outside of your comfort zone. And what will get you through is being grounded in who you are and why you're there. And, some days that fire burns strong, and other times you're like fanning it, just trying to get it to stay alive. But I think even acknowledging that and being human about that is important. And just constantly, I think one thing that we haven't talked about is being surrounded by community so that you're not alone. And that you have others around you who get it, whatever it is, and can, that you can talk to and you can be real with, you can be vulnerable with, and who can challenge you, and can, again, remind you why you're there. So yeah, it is so important. And it's something that I work on a lot.
What does your community look like?
So a couple of different ones. I have a group of good friends, and several different pockets of connection. But in particular, I have a coach, an executive coach. Her name is Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, and I cannot recommend that enough, especially for anyone who's making this kind of leap, because it's all about growing. It's all about being outside of your comfort zone, and you need someone to, again, come along in that journey with you and challenge you and guide you and have those type of conversations with you. And Rebecca, put together a community called Rise and Thrive. And it's a group of 6 women leaders. and then 7 coaches from all different areas of life, everything from nutrition to leadership to personal brand to, all kinds of different things, style. And they got in our heads and they helped to make us a community and to challenge us to grow. And so now I have this group of, 6 women leaders who really do get it and they do understand what I'm going through. And I understand what they're going through on a completely different level. So find that group that truly does get it, and whatever it is, whatever that really big hard thing is that you're going through. They're out there. There are other people who are like you that are also going through it. Find them. I guarantee that they are looking for community too, and reach out. It has been a game changer for me.
Are they all in the tech space? Are they across different categories or industries or market segments? What does the makeup of that group look like?
Yeah, so they're different space, different industries, all in the Indianapolis area. So it's the ties that bind are geography, I suppose.
Gotcha.
And the fact that we're all senior leaders, kind of doing a little bit different things. Some of them, I started a venture-backed tech startup, which is very different than being a C-suite leader at a very, very large company. But we're going through a lot of the same things and have traveled a lot of the same roads.
I love that. You've talked a lot about brand throughout the entire conversation and how you've gravitated towards that side of marketing. For somebody who's not in our world of marketing, how do you define brand differently than the other segments of marketing? You could have PR, you could have, like you said, demand generation, you could have customer marketing. How do you define brand marketing? What does it mean for you and how you approach it?
Yeah, it's everything, right? It's how others, internal, external, experience your company. Right. And that's a broad statement because brand is huge. It's and it's not a logo, it's not a style guide, it's not a message, it's not a website. It is perception. Your brand is how it's perceived by other people. If you're doing a good job, we talked about intention versus reality, that applies here too. So if you're doing a great job and you're successful, what you intend to be your brand is what's perceived, and therefore it's what reality. But perception is reality. And so your brand is how people experience your company. It's everything. It's your culture. It is all of your marketing and your messaging and what you're putting out there. It's how you respond in times like these of crisis, right? It's how you hire. It is your PR. It is your demand gen. It is everything. And so, there's a lot of pressure on brand marketers to walk that line of putting things out there into the world intentionally and hoping that they land the way that they're intended to, but also not trying to over control and micromanage it, because that doesn't work either. But it's understanding your audience so well that you know what they want and what they need from you, how you can best serve them, and how what you put out there is going to resonate with them. It's definitely more art than science. It's really, really hard to measure. But, that doesn't stop people from trying to measure it anyway. And, even companies like ours, with podcasting being so closely tied to brand and to, just overall content and engagement and experience, there are some things that you can do. And we're learning as we go as well, as far as what are the best ways. How can we change the status quo? How can we help measure brand affinity and brand awareness and engagement in ways that maybe are different, but maybe more meaningful? So yeah, it's everything. Brand is everything.
Do you feel that over the last, let's say, 10 years, there has been a shift in what you just said? We have to measure everything. And even if we can't measure it, we're still going to try, to this kind of Morpheus, like ethereal, immeasurable brand that people are more comfortable with that. Do you feel that shift has happened in not just marketing, but with companies in total?
I feel like it's happening, right?
Yeah.
Because especially, marketers like us can point to companies that are doing this, right? InVision is a great example. and they're not a customer or anything, I'm just a fan, where they,
Same here.
right, where they have said, you know what, we're going to make a documentary. We're going to make a movie because, again, we know our audience so well that we think this is going to resonate with them. And the why, the who's it for, had that nailed. Why are we doing it? Connection. We are going to create this connection. We're going to create something for this audience that they've never had before. We're going to serve this audience because they aren't being served. So we're going to give them something that makes them feel in on things and makes them feel connected. And by the way, they're going to feel connected with us. And cool, if anything happens from it, great. But really what we're doing is all about connection. And so they've created this movie, this documentary that, oh yeah, happened to do great things for them. And I'm not going to try to speak for them. I don't know all of their specs and all of the metrics, but I know that it produced incredible results. And so when you can point to companies like that have done it, it's that touchstone of like, look, if they can do it, maybe so can we. And I think right now, you said, has it happened and is it happening? I think that we're kind of in the midst of that, where marketers are trying new things and they're using things like podcasts and video and really creative marketing efforts to reach their audience in new and different ways and to really be the brand that their audience loves, whether they're customers or not, and to create raving fans and just huge followings. That is a thing that I've definitely seen. But I'm also seeing that they have one foot there and 1 foot on the other side of the border, where they're like, but how can we measure it though? Just to be like, I still want to measure it. I want to make sure that like we're measuring lift and traffic, and that's fine. I think that's you should measure things. I think any amount of effort or energy or money you put towards something, you should absolutely make sure that you're tracking and measuring impact. But I think there's a little bit of kind of doing both right now, and we'll see how it plays out and what people do find to be, one, successful, and two, important to measure.
Why do you think that message has been, I'll say, more palatable as we've gone on? As certainly the podcasting world has really been a huge part of this. But why do you think it's been more palatable for leaders, for boards, for investors to say, yeah, we can't really measure that thing, but we know this is incredibly important?
I think it's in large part thanks to companies that have seen success in trying new things, right? So I listed one example, but there's many across lots of different industries. Like I'm sure there's some universities that are doing really, really cool, innovative things that are hard to measure, and some, health systems, same thing. I mean, you could point to any industry and find a company that just did something really cool. And I think there's enough of that you can turn to the board, or you can turn to the investors, you can turn to the senior leadership and say, I want to do this thing. They did this thing. And they're either, there's a healthy amount of like, they're going to either eat our dinner and come after us because they're trying new things and we're not, or you can, point to that and say, we could be, there's nothing stopping us from being that too. I think there's enough examples out there that even the holdouts are starting to say, okay, fine, we can try it within these guidelines, which I think is, it's a start.
To kind of bring it full circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning, your LinkedIn, you had recently posted just pose the question, what's your greatest fear as a marketer? I'll ask it in two parts. What's your greatest fear as a marketer, and what's your greatest fear now as a CEO? Are they the same? You tell me.
Oh, man.
You didn't answer the question on your LinkedIn post. So.
I just want to know what everybody else had to say. Greatest fear as a marketer is and was, not being relevant, right? I think marketers are under a lot of pressure to build the brand, serve sales, generate the Google rankings, be the most magnetic brand on the planet for all the prospects, also market to existing customers. Like there's so much pressure to be prolific and effective and also, by the way, somehow be a subject matter expert in this line of work that, you're a marketer, but your company sells X, so you need to be a subject matter expert in X. I mean, there's so much pressure on marketers. And I think that I know I had a fear, and I see it in marketers still, being irrelevant and saying like, I missed the mark, or, I was effective in generating, Google search results, but the sales team hates everything that we're doing, or, and that's so common. And then you have to defend your numbers, whatever your numbers are. That generates a lot of fear. Generated a lot of fear for me, and especially trying to explain what you're doing, how you took big risks, like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
How you tried something new if the numbers didn't pan out, and trying to explain that to people who aren't marketers and who aren't in your shoes. There's a lot of fear there, a lot of frustration. As a CEO, not moving fast enough. Like there's no speed. There is no, miles per hour that is fast enough. And so that's a fear, but I would say even more so, again, it's always about the people. And so it's, is my team happy? Is our culture where it needs to be? It's the people. It's the people quotient of are we as a company who we need to be, and what can I do to make that better and stronger?
I had a question and I just forgot it based on what you just said there. Oh, you're always doing podcasts. You're a CEO, you're often the public face and voice. I know your co-founders are out there as well. I certainly see them on LinkedIn too, and doing other things. But with everything that you are wrapped up and involved in, and even just right now doing this podcast, what's the question that you wish you were asked more?
Oh, goodness. Where can I sign? How can I give you my money? How can I become a casted customer?
Yeah. I love that.
No, I think, okay. So that is honestly, if I could get asked that question, that would be amazing.
Because you're doing everything behind the scenes to make it to get to that point, right? You're doing everything to get somebody that excited that they ask you that question. I'm assuming that's what goes into that answer.
Which, by the way, just come to our website. We'll figure out. I think other than that, it's just, I believe, we're getting really heady into podcasting, but it's the thing that I can't talk about enough is the fact that, podcasting is great. Podcasting is here. Listenership is up. Listenership is exploding. In fact, it presents incredible opportunities for brands because that's where the eyes and ears are. But let's go beyond talking about, hey, should brands do podcasts and how can they, air quotes, do podcasts better, to saying, how can we put expert conversations at the center of everything we're doing in marketing to really change the way we think about it, make our marketing teams more effective, make our marketing strategies and marketing content more relevant and more successful? How can we kind of turn everything on its side and kind of rethink the way that we're looking at marketing, because it's time, and I could talk about that all day. So yeah, I wish, and I look forward to the opportunity to talk about that more.
Love it. Lindsay, this has been so much fun. I have greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for being willing to jump on here and talk to somebody who you've only interacted with on LinkedIn before. So,
podcast fans are podcast family to me. So.
I love it. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you, and let's keep in touch. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Many, many thanks to today's guest, Lindsay Tjepkema. Please do me and Lindsay a huge favor and share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to this conversation. Whether they're a marketer or a podcaster or a CEO, they might like it. So go ahead and share it and let others know that you're listening to the follow-up question. And it's cliche in the podcasting world to ask for reviews. I know, and I can't stand cliches, but I'm going to do it anyway. Honestly, reviews do help. Me, all your favorite podcasters continue to do what they do and reach more people. So if you have it in your heart, please leave a rating and review of the follow-up question wherever you might be listening to this podcast. If you know someone who you think would be a great guest on the follow-up question, or have a question you'd like me to address on a future episode, please email me at michael@thefollowupquestion.com or go to thefollowupquestion.com/contact and submit a guest recommendation. If you want to improve your own ability to listen and ask questions, hop over to thefollowupquestion.com/newsletter and subscribe. And when you do, I'll send you my free guide, the 10 follow-up questions guaranteed to keep a conversation going. You'll also be the first to know about new content and fresh tips and tricks, and that's all free when you subscribe at thefollowupquestion.com/newsletter, and all of those links are in the show notes. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question, and until next time, keep asking questions.